Hey there, and welcome to Locked On Sooners. On today's show, could Alex Grinch potentially be on the move? We've got some rooting interest for you on a Saturday where Oklahoma is on the bye and it's championship November. No better way to get it started than here on Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by McDonald's. Proudly serving communities since 1965, McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's a place where friends and family from the community can come together. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. Make sure you grab yourself an apple pie or a sausage burrito this morning. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Sooners Nation, and welcome to the Friday edition of the Locked On Sooners podcast. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams, and you can read my work covering the Oklahoma Sooners over at the Sooners Wire at usatoday.com. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Sooners and on Facebook, Locked On Sooners. Also now available on YouTube, so check out Locked On Sooners over there. Make sure you subscribe, like the video. Let me know what you feel about it in the comments. Love to see your questions as well. On yesterday's show, we answered a bunch of Twitter questions. If you've got a question you'd like for me to answer here on the show, make sure you go ahead and throw it in the comments section. Would love to get your feedback on that. But like I talked about in the open, we're going to talk about Alex Grinch. Now there's a report out that Alex Grinch will be interviewing with the Texas Tech Red Raiders for their head coaching job. Matt Wells was fired a couple weeks ago, and they are starting to comb the waters for a new replacement, a new head coach. And Alex Grinch, who's one of those kind of hot young names in college football. I mean, he's been on the move in several places. Was Mike Leach's defensive coordinator up at Washington State, went to Ohio State, now at Oklahoma. Now he's had 3 coordinating jobs. Potentially he might be ready for a head coaching job. Now, a buddy of mine, Patrick Kahn, who was on the show last week to get us ready for Texas Tech, who's pretty in touch with what's going on in Red Raider country, says he may not be the top priority for them. They're probably still going to be looking more towards the Sunny Dykes over at SMU, and so or even the guy down at UTSA. So Alex Grinch could be on the move if those things don't work out. However, it'd have to not work out well for Texas Tech for Alex Grinch. Now, does it make sense for Alex Grinch? I think as a defensive coordinator, you're kind of in a tough spot in modern football right now because so much of the game is dependent upon the offensive side of the football, the quarterback position, building your offensive line, getting those skill position players in and on a campus. That doesn't mean that a defensive guy can't be successful. I mean, we're seeing it right now with Dave Aranda. Now you can go back to Nick Saban, who's a defensive guy, but I think he's kind of the aberration because he's been a head coach for 2 decades now in major college football. Bob Stoops came up that way as well, but I think we're seeing that the kind of the fastest way to build a program is a little bit more, find your quarterback, build your offense. I think the other thing that, we can talk about Dave Aranda for a second. The other thing that's made him so successful is he's found a group of offensive coaches that have helped rebuild his offensive line and put in an offensive scheme that really complement his defense quite well. And they've been really, really successful. Now, that defense was pretty good last year, but what's helped them make the jump this year was that the offense has picked it up and they've played really, really good football under Gary Bohannon and that offensive line, who's one of the best in the country. So, if you're Alex Grinch, I mean, if you're going to go to Tech, you better make sure you have a really good plan for what you're going to do offensively, because defense isn't going to win you games at Tech. You're going to have to score because you're probably not going to be able to find enough talent on the defensive side of the football to overcome some of the offensive woes that Tech's been facing the last few years. If you look at just kind of historical trends, the one thing that is consistent year to year is offensive football. As far as efficiency, defense, it kind of wanes up and down unless you're like Alabama or Ohio State, something like that. But even then, those teams often can experience some roller coaster rides of efficiency Uh, but offensive football, if you can find consistency at the quarterback position, which is hard, it's really hard to do, unless you're Oklahoma. But if you can find some consistency, it doesn't have to be a Heisman Trophy winner every year. Then you're going to have a chance to be pretty good every year. Now that's what happened with Mike Leach, right? Mike Leach was able to find quarterbacks that fit his system quite well. The Graham Harrells, the Cliff Kingsburys, the Sonny Cumbies, guys that could come in, run the spread, run that air raid offense, and run it efficiently. And they were able to find some success. Now, it was never national championship success, but if you're Texas Tech, like, your first goal should just be bowl eligibility. Second goal, contending at the top of the conference, being one of those top 4 or 5 teams at in the conference, and maybe having an upset or two every year. And I think for Alex Grinch, like, yes, if you're looking for a head coaching job, you just gotta have to take a job. But I feel like there's a really difficult path to success at Texas Tech. And that's not to say he can't win there, because obviously Mike Leach did and was very successful before they ran him out of town. But I think it's just a really difficult path to success. There's not much of a draw to Lubbock. Texas Tech is probably a great school, but there's a lot of great schools out there. There's a lot of schools that you can go and get a great education. And so what is he going to be able to do to recruit players? Now, he's proven capable of recruiting players to Norman. And, Norman, it's a great town. Love Norman myself. But for the outsider, if you're going into Norman, is it something does it separate itself from other, college towns in the country? In some ways, yes. In other ways, maybe there's other towns that might stand out a little bit more. But Alex Grinch has proven to be a capable recruiter. He's helped Oklahoma's defense start to recruit some 4 and 5 star guys in the most recent recruiting class, but then also coming up in 2022 and 2023. And so there's definitely a chance for him to do something there. I think if you're him, though, a job like maybe TCU might be a little bit more interesting, because it's in a major metropolitan area. There might be a little bit more patience. They showed Gary Patterson quite a bit of patience. Of course, he built that program, and maybe that's not even a job you'd want to take, because it'd be really hard to fill in those shoes. But even if you're Alex Grinch, do you want to take a job inside the Big 12, knowing that it's going to really be changing a lot in the next couple of years? Of course, if you do take a job in the Big 12, maybe you're not having to face Oklahoma next year, and that's a plus. Of course, with the changing landscape of the Big 12, you do have a little bit better chance to contend with Oklahoma and Texas heading to the SEC. Now, with Cincinnati coming in, Houston coming in, that changes the game a little bit and makes things a little bit more challenging for you. It just increases the depth, at the top. So it's really fascinating. It's really interesting to see what will happen there if he's offered the job. If he's offered the job, I'm not sure he takes it. To me, if I'm him, I'm kind of waiting it out. Like, there are times when your name will get hot, and with the way the defense has played this year, it's kind of been up and down. Maybe you're going to wait for your defense to get hotter, where your name gets a little bit hotter. You think about like a Brent Venables. That's a guy who's had one of the best defenses in the country over the last decade. But then this year, Clemson has really fallen off. Had he taken a job before Trevor Lawrence left, and where Clemson was still hot, potentially he'd have his first head coaching job at a pretty solid school. And so now kind of the stock has dropped a little bit on Oklahoma's defense, and maybe he wants to wait another year or two to kind of rebuild the defense, rebuild kind of his legacy a little bit, and just kind of see what happens. On the flip side of that, good chance that Nick Bonito's heading to the NFL draft, Jalen Redmond, Perrin Winfrey, Isaiah Thomas, Pat Fields, Deshaun White, Brian Asamoah could be going, Delarin Turner-Yell. There's a ton of guys on that defense that he's going to be potentially losing. Caleb Kelly. So would he want to stick around for another year? Now, he's been visibly frustrated this year with the way that Oklahoma has practiced. So it could be one of those situations where he's kind of looking towards something else, maybe. Just a little bit disappointed with just how the guys have gone about their business week to week. Of course, things have turned around a little bit. They had a really good game against Texas Tech. And so who knows how he's feeling? It's only Alex Grinch knows how he's feeling or what he's looking for. But it's interesting news to say the least that in the middle of the bye week of a 9-0 season with Oklahoma making a push for the college football playoff and their 7th straight Big 12 title, that Alex Grinch could potentially be on the move. But coming up next, we'll talk about your rooting interests for Saturday, or at least who I think you should root for on Saturday with Oklahoma on a bye, as we get ready to make that final push into championship November. But first, I want to talk to you about our friends over at McDonald's. This episode is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. It's always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. McDonald's is a place where friends and families can come to reconnect. Win or lose, it's a place where teammates, competitors, the home team, or the away team can come to recharge. For me and my family, it's always a place we hit up on every road trip. For my daughter and I, after soccer practice on Tuesdays, we will hit up McDonald's, get her a Happy Meal, get myself that quarter pounder with cheese. Always got to get the large French fry. Got to eat them hot, right? And when they get in the car, that's one of my favorite things to do is as soon as those things get in the car, I like to just start nibbling on those on the way home. But man, love McDonald's, love the apple pie. The sausage burrito has always been a go-to for me. Anytime I've got a big meeting, an important interview, love McDonald's. And you can get great coffee there sometimes too. Even just a regular drip coffee. It's so good. It just hits home every single time. McDonald's is such a great place to get just tasty, affordable food, but also to reconnect with your family and friends. For me, when I was a kid, my parents would be driving down the road and I'd just yell at the top of my lungs, "Stop!" And my parents would be like, what's going on? And I'd just point to McDonald's and be like, "French fries." And they'd be like, "Oh, of course, we got to get French fries for McDonald's." And it's always just hit home. When I was younger, if I was doing road trips, get that 20-piece chicken nugget. Always great options over at McDonald's. So make sure you go to check out McDonald's. If you're looking for something quick, on the go, tasty, affordable, McDonald's is your place to be. So make sure you go there. Sing the jingle with me. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it. And now let's talk about some Big 12 rooting interests, Oklahoma rooting interests, rather. So a lot of interesting games this week. Things that we want to see happen that will either bolster Oklahoma's chances in the college football playoff push or will hurt somebody else's chances so that Oklahoma could potentially slide up. So first of all, we've got Cincinnati minus 22.5 versus Tulsa. Now, if I'm a betting man, I'm not taking Tulsa in those points. Cincinnati's offense has just been too good. Their defense has been really, really good as well. But this is one of those games that could have Cincy on upset alert. Tulsa traveling to Ohio, College game day is going to be there. It's going to be a pretty exciting environment. And we know Tulsa can be a tough team. They've played some really tough games over the last few years. Haven't always come out on top, but there's somebody who's going to give teams fits. I mean, we've seen it, their games against Oklahoma State, things like that. On the flip side, teams that have like dominant offenses like Cincinnati does, they're going to give everybody trouble. So I don't necessarily look for Tulsa to win this one, but hey, you want a local rooting interest, you want to see somebody that can help Oklahoma climb the rankings, let's go Golden Hurricanes. We've got to see that. Next one, this one is going to be kind of interesting to me. Kansas State laying 23.5 versus Kansas. Now there's two arguments here. Do you want to see Kansas potentially knock off Kansas State and bolster what looked like a terrible showing for Oklahoma? Or do you want to see Kansas State just roll Kansas and be like, oh, okay, well, we had a 6-point win over Kansas State. They're a lot better than we think. It's hard when it's a Big 12 team or a Big 12 matchup because you're like, well, we got wins over both of them. We looked terrible against Kansas for a half, but we looked really good against Kansas State, although defensively we struggled a little bit, giving up, we gave up 24 points. The 31 was after a kickoff return for a touchdown. So this one, you could flip a coin. Maybe you root for a really close game. You root for Kansas to give Kansas State a push, but then not beat Kansas State because you don't want them to weaken that win. Next up, this one is pretty clear to me. You want to see Oklahoma State win this one, and you'd like to see them do it convincingly. With them and with Baylor and Iowa State coming up, you want those three teams to be as highly ranked, as hot as possible when you play them, because you need them to have the interests of the nation and be seen as a top team. Now, Oklahoma State, number 11 currently in the college football playoff rankings. You want them to climb into that top 10 so that when Oklahoma hopefully beats them, it just helps bolster their resume quite a bit. The same goes for, and so Oklahoma State minus the 3.5. I would take, Oklahoma State minus the 3.5. West Virginia has been hot. They're playing at home. This is going to be a tough matchup. The West Virginia defensive line is pretty good. It could help bottle up Jalen Warren a little bit in that Oklahoma State run game. If Spencer Sanders isn't as efficient as he needs to be, this could be a really tough game for Oklahoma State. But I think the Cowboys come out on top. I think it's going to be a game that they're able to make enough plays offensively, and the defense is going to smother Jarrett Doege. And I think Oklahoma State by minus the 3.5. To me, if I was going to bet on that game, that's the way I'd lean. And then we got the Longhorns traveling up to Ames to stave off a potential fourth straight loss. They're, Iowa State's laying 6.5 against Texas. Man, that's going to be a tough one. Texas really needs a win right now. They really need something to build some optimism for the future because things are not going well right now in Austin. They got coaches, arguing with players, and that same player, Joshua Moore, could be now on the outs with the program. That it's just it's a mess right now, and it's going to take time for Steve Sarkisian to kind of get his guys in and build that program up the way he wants it to. But will Texas have the patience for it if they go into Ames and they lose to an Iowa State team that just came off a loss to West Virginia? Iowa State's going to be probably hot and really motivated to lay one on the Longhorns. If you're Oklahoma, you want to see Iowa State win this one, and you want to see them do it convincingly because you want to be able to go in there and then knock off Iowa State and be like, oh yeah, that was a big win. If Iowa State wins this one convincingly, they'll be back in the top 25 polls, probably be in the college football playoff rankings, and that'll set you up well for when you play them. Up next, we got Baylor minus 6.5 versus TCU. Now, I saw that line. I'm like, only 6.5? Like, they're only favored by 6.5? That really surprises me, given TCU struggles, the coaching change. Maybe they're thinking the coaching change is going to light a fire under the Horned Frogs. I'm not necessarily seeing it. I still think Baylor is the better team. They're a more complete team on both sides of the football. And TCU just they can be so hot or cold. Now they got good players in Max Duggan, Zach Evans, Quentin Johnston, even Kendra Miller is really good. But defensively, I think they just don't really hold up against Baylor. Baylor's going to be able to run the football on them. And I don't think TCU is going to be able to put up enough points. Now they've got the offensive, firepower to do it. I just think the Baylor defense is going to bottle them up enough and slow them down enough to win this game and to probably cover as well. So again, this is one of those where you want Baylor to win because you want them to look better in the rankings and you want them to jump into that top 10 of the college football playoff rankings. And then these next ones, it's going to be really, really hard to see any one of these upsets happening. And we got a couple of SEC games, and we've got a Big Ten game that have playoff implications. And first one is Missouri traveling to Athens to face the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia's favored by 39 points. That's such a large line. That is so crazy. And all these lines are courtesy of our friends over at BetOnline.ag, where you can get. We'll talk about it in the break, but you can get a 150% welcome bonus using our promo code Locked On. But Georgia minus 39. I mean, Georgia's going to win this game. They're really formidable. Like, this is a legit team with a legit defense that can beat up on just about anybody. My only questions with Georgia are quarterback. They're okay, but I feel like their quarterback is a situation where it's like, he's good enough to win, but he's not good enough to carry us, if that makes sense. Like, if our defense is having an off day, could we put the hands in Stetson? I don't know about that. But Missouri's not going to win this game. Missouri's just been bad this year. And so you hope for Missouri to maybe like have a great showing and just like pull out one of their best games of the year or of the school's history and knock off Georgia, let's go for that. Go Tigers. No, wrong, that's the wrong Tigers. We'll talk about those Tigers right now. And that is LSU going to Tuscaloosa, almost to Chattanooga. I was like, no, that's in Tennessee. To face Alabama. Alabama is minus 28.5 in this one. And I mean, really, LSU could jump up and surprise them. I don't see it happening. They've not been consistent on either side of the football. Now, they had just a couple weeks ago, it was a really good showing against Ole Miss. I think it was Ole Miss. And but yeah, LSU's just been so inconsistent, and their team's just a mess. Coach O, just I don't know. They're just like Austin. There's so much drama happening right now in Baton Rouge. It's ridiculous, and I don't think Alabama's going to suffer any kind of letdown. LSU is one of those teams that you just give up for, because at least just the way the program's been in the past, just how good they've been. You're not gonna not show up for LSU. And so that, I think that's Alabama now. Do they cover? That's a tough one, because I always struggle with these point spreads that are this big, because it doesn't take much to not cover these, because it's such a large spread. Like even the Georgia minus 39, I'm like, yeah, Missouri's bad, but that's a lot of points to lay. And then in the Big Ten, our last game of the week that really provides some very interesting rooting interests. And this is Ohio State versus Nebraska. Ohio State's laying 15 points against the Cornhuskers. Hey, could Nebraska do us a favor? That'd be a really good one. If Nebraska were able to knock off the Buckeyes, it would both benefit Oklahoma by allowing Oklahoma to jump ahead of Ohio State, and also provide Oklahoma with a quality win against a team that knocked off a quality opponent. And we're going to play that 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon over the next month. So we're looking for every little thread that helps Oklahoma get into the college football playoff. And if the Cornhuskers can go into Columbus and beat the Buckeyes, which they probably won't, hey, maybe we get the game of the year from Adrian Martinez. They played Oklahoma pretty close. Could they do the same against Ohio State? Here's hoping, right? But coming up next, let's talk about Championship November. We'll give you some Caleb Williams Heisman odds from BetOnline as well. But speaking of BetOnline, it's back and it's better than ever. They got a new web interface for the start of basketball season, and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile device and sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit just using our promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. That's, you put in $100, BetOnline will give you $50 to play with. You put in $200, they'll give you $100. Again, using our promo code Locked On. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. We also got to talk about our friends over at Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. If you haven't tried Built Bar by now, you're missing out. I've been talking to you about Built Bar for more than a year. It's part of my morning every single day. I just had one before coming on the show. It's fantastic. It tastes great, and it's great for you. Low calorie, low carb, low fat, low sugar, and high in protein. As many as 17 or 18 grams of protein in every single bar, and only 4 or 5 grams of sugar. It's a great balance, a great breakfast. You will not miss out. If you're even just needing a snack in the middle of your workday, or if you're running errands and you need something quick and on the go, Built Bar is a great place to get your energy, your calorie requirement, your nutritional requirements, and it gives you the energy you need to get through whatever it is you need. If you need it for a workout, go to BuiltBar.com or Built.com, and they've got great flavors like mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, double chocolate, cherry barcia, salted caramel. So many different options. You can try a mixed box and figure out which Built Bar is your favorite. But go to Built.com. Use our promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED 15, and you'll get 15% off your order. If you haven't tried Built Bar, now's the time to do it. Go to Built.com. Use our promo code LOCKED15. And now let's talk about some more odds. Caleb Williams is showing up on Heisman odd lists. This is odd. No, he's played such a great football, man. It's not surprising to see him showing up over at USA Today Sports. in the college football writer Paul Meyerberg, every week he comes out with his Heisman rankings or at least his quarterback rankings. And amongst quarterbacks, he's now 5th in the country. The week before last, he was 6th. He jumped Desmond Ridder and the quarterback over at Wake Forest in Heisman odds. And if he has the month of November, like we hope he will, and the Oklahoma Sooners are able to win out and go to the Big 12 championship and win that, a lot of it's going to be because of Caleb Williams, and a lot of it's going to be because of the way he plays. He's going to have several opportunities to create Heisman moments, and it's exciting. There's a lot of excitement right now about Caleb Williams, about the Oklahoma Sooners, and if he's able to put up 4 touchdowns a game, 5 touchdowns a game over the next month, and Oklahoma wins out, it's going to be really hard to keep him out of New York and from the Heisman finalist ceremony. Now, he may not win because I think everybody's going to hold the fact that he only has, right now 4 starts. By the end of the season, he'll probably have 8 starts under his belt, or I guess 3 starts, and played most of the Texas game. So, 3.5 games plus 4 more, 7.5 games or so under his belt. And they're going to use that to keep him out of the Heisman discussion, but that shouldn't matter. Like, he's playing at such a high level that right now he's playing like the best player in the country. Kenneth Walker's playing great out of Michigan State, but I don't think there's anybody that's moved the needle as much as Caleb Williams. So plus 425, those are the 3rd best Heisman odds over at BetOnline. Bryce Young from Alabama, he's plus 200. Kenneth Walker at Michigan State's plus 375. And then you got Caleb Williams at plus 425. CJ Stroud comes in at plus 600. Matt Corral at plus 650. You got Kenny Pickett at plus 1,600. The interesting one here, if you're just looking for kind of a long shot, a couple of them actually. So Desmond Ridder at plus 4,000, and then Sam Hartman also at plus 4,000. Like, if you're looking for, maybe a long shot to throw some money on, Desmond Ridder and Sam Hartman look like really solid options right now. Like, if you want to, throw hey, here's $10 to make me $400. Maybe Desmond Ridder is your guy, so that plus 4,000, it's like for every $100 you bet, you'll get 4,000 back. Or if you're going to bet on Caleb Williams, for every 100 you get, you get $425 back. So shout out to Caleb Williams for showing up on the Heisman odds lists and the rankings. But also let's talk about Championship November. It's the time of the year where Oklahoma plays their best football. This is their brand, right? Every November. They've won 21 straight. Their last loss was in 2014 to Oklahoma State, which could be the thing that puts a nail in their season this year. I mean, this is going to be the time of the year where if Oklahoma is going to make the push for the college football playoff, it's going to happen this month. And I mean, they've got to win all their games. The college football playoff committee basically made it clear that if you don't win your games, you're not going. So, and I think that rings true for much of the Big 12. This is going to be a year where if there's a one-loss Big 12 champion, whether it's Baylor or Oklahoma State or Oklahoma, they're probably still going to be sitting at home unless there's a lot more chaos that happens that opens the door for the Big 12 to have a participant with one loss. But Oklahoma they got to go undefeated. They got to run the table. And it starts next Saturday against Baylor, which is going to be a tough game. Baylor is a tough opponent. They showed it last year, even when they didn't really have an offense that could compete with the Sooners. Their defense did. And this year they've got an offensive line that's playing really good football. They got a running game that's just mowing people over. And they've got an offensive line that is just plowing the way. And so that's going to be a really, really tough one. But a lot of great football happening this weekend, even with Oklahoma on a bye. One game we failed to mention that it wasn't really, I don't really think factors in much to Oklahoma's push for the college football playoff, but that's Auburn and Texas A&M, two teams that are ranked 13 and 14. That could be a lot of fun. One that I'm looking forward to that we talked about with the Big 12 roundtable was Air Force and Navy. That could be a lot of fun as well. It's always great when you get two of the armed forces schools going up against one another. I always think it's a lot of fun to see those military schools playing each other. Sorry, it's Army and Air Force. My apologies. But a lot of great football this weekend. A lot of great football still to come, and can't wait to talk to you more about it. But come on, it's Championship November. Time to get hyped. Time to get ready for the Oklahoma Sooners making that run for the college football playoff. I think we're all excited about it. We're all excited for what this team can be. I think they're just scratching the surface. I mean, we got a true freshman quarterback that has played 3.5 games. He's played great. The scary part is he can improve. He can still get better. And I think that's just going to come with experience. He's already got all the tools. He's just got to refine a few things. He'll see more defenses. He'll get better as he goes, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thank you so much for tuning in, making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Go check out the Locked On Big 12 podcast for your second listen, or the Locked On Locked On Cowboys podcast if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. Or go listen to our guy Rylan Stiles for Locked On Thunder. He does an amazing job over there as well. So a lot of great options for you here on the Locked On Podcast Network. If you've got a team, we've probably got a podcast covering it. So until Monday, when we will recap what happened on the college football weekend, I'm John Williams. Make sure you check out my work over at the Sooners Wire at usatoday.com. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Sooners, or on Facebook, Locked On Sooners Podcast. The show is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and available on YouTube. Make sure you go and subscribe to the show over there. But until Monday, I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.